The man who knew tomorrow. The shifting future. The machine that shouldn't exist. Dr. Samuel Grayson had always been obsessed with the future. As a physicist working in experimental quantum mechanics, he spent years researching temporal information transfer, the idea that data could be sent across time itself. Most of his colleagues dismissed it as science fiction, but on October 17, 2032, he proved them wrong. Hidden in his private lab, away from university oversight, he built a device unlike anything before, a modified quantum receiver designed to intercept signals from the future. For weeks, he tested it, expecting meaningless noise. Then, one night, the screen flickered to life. A news website appeared. The date in the corner read October 18, 2032, one day ahead of the present. His hands trembled as he read the headlines. Stock market surges after tech giant announces breakthrough AI. At first, he assumed it was a glitch. But when he checked the real-world news 24 hours later, the same headline appeared. Word for word, his machine worked. It could read newspapers from the future. And with that power, he saw an opportunity. Playing with time. At first, Grayson used the machine for small gains, stock investments, sports bets, and avoiding bad days before they happened. It felt harmless. But soon he became addicted to knowing what came next. He checked the headlines daily, tweaking his actions to change his own future. If he saw bad news, he'd make different choices. If an accident was reported, he'd avoid the area. But then something strange happened. One morning, the headline read, "Tensions escalate as world leaders clash over Arctic territory." Yet, when he checked again hours later, the headline was gone, replaced by something else. Breakthrough in cancer research promises cure within a decade. The war never happened, as if it had been erased. And this was only the beginning. A future that won't stay still. The pattern continued. Every time he checked the future, the headlines would shift. One day, he read about a devastating earthquake in Japan. The next, the article was gone, as if the disaster had never existed. At first, he told himself that random fluctuations in quantum data might be causing the changes. But as he analyzed the patterns, a horrifying realization sank in. Someone or something was editing reality itself. Then on November 5, 2032, he saw the headline that changed everything. Scientist discovers the truth. Disappears hours later. His own name was in the article. His own photo was there, staring back at him. His blood ran cold. He refreshed the page. The headline was gone, as if it had never been written. The hidden hand. Terrified, Grayson stopped using the machine. But no matter what he did, he couldn't unsee what he had discovered. Reality wasn't just changing. It was being controlled. By who? By what? He searched for answers, digging through old research papers, conspiracy theories, even classified government files leaked on the dark web. One name kept appearing. The Architects, a hidden organization, or perhaps something more than human, responsible for maintaining the timeline. Some called them guardians of reality. Others called them executioners, because anyone who got too close to the truth vanished. The vanishing. Grayson's paranoia grew. Every night he felt watched. Every step he took, he feared he was being followed. Then, on November 9, 2032, the machine activated on its own. A single message appeared. You weren't supposed to see this. The screen went black. A second later, his lab door unlocked by itself. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Something or someone was coming for him. And then darkness, erased from existence. Samuel Grayson's world dissolved into a blinding white. He wasn't unconscious, not exactly. It was more like his senses had been overloaded, then abruptly shut down, leaving him in a void of pure sensory deprivation. He became aware of his own existence again in a sterile, white room. It was devoid of windows, furniture, or any distinguishing features, save for a single metal table and two chairs. The air hung heavy with an unsettling stillness, a complete absence of the hum of electricity or the subtle vibrations of the outside world. Panic clawed at him. He instinctively reached for his phone, his constant companion, only to find his pockets empty. He scanned the room, desperate for any clue, any sign of how he had gotten here. There was nothing. It was as if he had been plucked from reality and placed in this sterile pocket of non-existence. Seated across the table was a man dressed in an impeccably tailored dark suit. He was utterly unremarkable. His face was a study in blandness. No striking features, no distinguishing marks, no hint of emotion. He was a blank canvas, a face designed to fade into a crowd, to be forgotten the moment he turned away. Yet his eyes, though ordinary, held an unnerving intensity. The man smiled, a slow, deliberate movement that didn't reach his eyes. "Dr. Grayson, we need to talk." Grayson's throat felt like sandpaper. He tried to swallow, but his mouth was dry. "Where am I?" "Nowhere," the man replied, his voice smooth and even, devoid of inflection. He placed a thin black folder on the table between them. "Let's discuss your discoveries." He flipped the folder open. Inside, neatly printed, were copies of the news headlines Grayson had witnessed changing. Some were from the present, headlines he had seen just before his world had gone white. Others were from futures that had been, futures that he knew, with chilling certainty, no longer existed. He saw headlines proclaiming the end of conflicts that now raged, the unveiling of technologies that were now just theoretical possibilities, ghosts of futures past. Then his blood ran cold. He saw his own face staring back at him from a news clipping. The headline screamed, "Scientist discovers the truth. Disappears hours later." A tremor ran through Grayson's hands. The implications were terrifying. "Who are you?" The man leaned forward, his expression unchanging. "We are the architects. We maintain reality, the code of the universe." The architect continued, his voice calm and measured, as if he were discussing the weather. "Most people operate under the comforting illusion that time is a linear progression, a fixed path that unfolds naturally. They believe the future is a predetermined destination. But that is incorrect." He gestured towards a folder, the crisp paper rustling slightly in the still air. "Reality is not a straight line. It is a complex, intricate system. And like any system, it requires maintenance, constant vigilance, and careful calibration." Grayson's heart hammered against his ribs. The implications of what the man was saying were staggering, mind-boggling. You rewrite the future?" The man shook his head slightly, a barely perceptible movement. "We edit deviations. We correct errors. Think of it as quality control. Your machine—" He allowed a hint of amusement to flicker across his face. It was never supposed to work. It introduced a glitch into the system. Grayson felt a wave of nausea wash over him. "So, you changed the headlines. You erased entire events, entire timelines." "We do what is necessary," the architect replied, his voice hardening slightly. "Wars that shouldn't happen, conflicts that threaten to destabilize the delicate balance of power, technologies that arrive too soon, disrupting the natural progression of society. People who learn too much. They become anomalies." The man slid the folder across the table towards Grayson. "And now we have a problem. You have seen behind the curtain. You have glimpsed the inner workings of the machine." Grayson clenched his fists, his knuckles white. "What happens now?" The man tapped the folder with a fingertip. "We offer choices. 3 choices. Option 1, the architect began, his voice flat and emotionless. "You forget everything. We erase your memories of these events, of your discoveries, of us. You return to your normal life, blissfully unaware of the truth, a cog in the machine once more." Grayson swallowed hard, his throat tight. "And if I refuse?" "Option 2, the architect continued, his gaze unwavering. "You disappear. Officially, you never existed. Your records are erased. Your presence in the world is rectified. You become a ghost, a phantom limb of a timeline that never was. Grayson's stomach lurched. The thought of simply ceasing to be, of being wiped from existence, was more terrifying than he could have imagined. And the third option? For the first time, the architect hesitated, a flicker of something that might have been reluctance crossing his face. Then, in a quiet, almost hesitant voice, he said, "Option 3. You join us. The truth about the architects." Grayson scoffed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Join you? The people who manipulate reality, who erase lives and futures on a whim." The architect studied him, his gaze penetrating. "You misunderstand, Dr. Grayson. We do not destroy. We protect. We are the guardians of the timeline, the custodians of reality." He reached inside his jacket and pulled out a small, sleek, black device. He placed it on the table between them. It hummed faintly, a low, almost imperceptible thrum. "This," he said, his voice laced with a strange mixture of awe and weariness, "contains the records of every reset, every correction, every anomaly in history, every future that was, and every future that might have been." Grayson's eyes widened, fixated on the device. "You keep records of the erased futures?" The architect nodded. "To prevent mistakes, to learn from the past, even the past that no longer exists. We have been doing this for longer than you can imagine, longer than humanity itself has existed." Grayson stared at the device, his mind reeling. The weight of history, of countless erased possibilities, seemed to press down on him. "And if I refuse all 3 options?" The architect sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of ages. "Then we correct you. We recalibrate the system." The walls around Grayson began to shimmer and distort. The solid white room dissolved, replaced by an empty, featureless void. There was no up, no down, no left, no right. Just an endless expanse of nothingness. The world itself was unraveling around him, the fabric of reality fraying at the edges. The final choice. Time seemed, to slow, to stretch and compress, becoming a fluid, malleable substance. Grayson saw versions of himself flickering in the periphery of his vision, different possibilities, different timelines. In one, he chose option 1, his memories erased, returning to his mundane life, never knowing the truth. In another, he chose option 2, ceasing to exist, becoming a footnote in a history that was never written. And in another, he chose option 3 and became one of them, an architect of reality. He didn't want to forget. The knowledge he had gained, the glimpse behind the curtain, was too profound, too terrifying to simply erase. He didn't want to be erased either, to vanish as if he had never been. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the frantic beating of his heart. He looked at the black device, its faint hum now seeming to resonate within him. He looked at the architect, whose face remained impassive, betraying nothing. He reached out his hand. The man who knew tomorrow. The next morning, Dr. Samuel Grayson was gone. His home was empty, the furniture covered in dust sheets, as if no one had lived there for years. His lab was dismantled, the equipment gone, the space scrubbed clean. His name was deleted from university records. His research papers vanished from online databases. It was as if he had never existed, a ripple erased from the pond of time. But across the world, subtle, almost imperceptible changes occurred. A war, brewing on the verge of eruption, was averted at the last minute. The tensions mysteriously diffused. A dangerous experiment, pushing the boundaries of scientific ethics, was quietly shut down, the researchers reassigned. A potential pandemic, its seed sown in a remote corner of the world, was contained before it could spread. And in a high-security government facility, deep underground, a new architect sat in a darkened room, bathed in the cool glow of a bank of monitors. He wore a dark suit, impeccably tailored, and his face was unremarkable, designed to blend in. He was reading tomorrow's headlines, the ink still wet, the stories yet to unfold. He adjusted his tie, a small, almost nervous gesture. The screen in front of him flickered, displaying a cascade of information. Stock market fluctuations, geopolitical tensions, scientific breakthroughs, all potential threads in the tapestry of tomorrow. He leaned closer, his eyes scanning the data streams, searching for anomalies, for potential deviations from the intended course. He whispered to himself, his voice barely audible in the quiet hum of the server room. Now, what needs to be corrected? His gaze settled on a headline. Prominent physicist announces groundbreaking discovery, challenges existing models of time. A faint frown creased his brow. He recognized the name, Dr. Evelyn Reed. Brilliant, driven, and a potential problem. Her research, if left unchecked, could unravel the delicate balance they maintained, could expose the hidden architecture of reality to the uninitiated. He tapped a few keys on the console, bringing up Dr. Reed's profile. Her picture showed a woman with intelligent eyes and a determined set to her jaw. He knew the type, brilliant minds, often blind to the larger consequences of their pursuits. They saw the puzzle but not the picture. He considered his options. Option 1. A subtle nudge, a minor adjustment to her research, a redirection of her focus. A grant pulled, a collaboration dissolved, a subtle discouragement that would steer her away from the dangerous truth. Option 2. A more direct approach. A carefully orchestrated accident. A professional setback. Something that would discredit her work and silence her voice. A messy solution, but sometimes necessary. Option 3. He hesitated. Option 3 was always the last resort. It involved direct intervention, a meeting, a conversation. It was the most unpredictable option, the one that carried the greatest risk. But it was also the most effective. He sighed. Dr. Reed's discovery was too significant to ignore. A nudge might not be enough. An accident that felt too blunt. He preferred subtlety, precision. But this situation called for something more. He accessed the secure communication channel and initiated a connection. A voice answered on the other end, calm and professional. Yes, I need a meeting, he said, his voice firm. Dr. Evelyn Reed. Tomorrow. Her research, it needs to be addressed. Understood, the voice replied. I will make the arrangements. He closed the communication channel and turned back to the screen. The headlines continued to scroll, a constant stream of potential futures, each one a thread in the intricate web of reality. He watched them, his eyes sharp, his mind calculating, always vigilant, always ready to make the necessary corrections. He knew his work was never done. There would always be new threats, new anomalies, new challenges to the delicate balance of reality. The architects were the silent guardians, the unseen manipulators, the custodians of time itself. And he was one of them now, bound to their mission, forever tasked with maintaining the illusion of order in a universe that was inherently chaotic. He thought of Samuel Grayson, the man who knew tomorrow, the man who had glimpsed the truth and had ultimately chosen to embrace it. Had Grayson made the right choice? He didn't know. Perhaps one day he would find out. He looked at the headline about Dr. Reed again. Tomorrow would be interesting. He had a feeling this was just the beginning. The universe was vast, and the threads of reality were infinite. There would always be something that needed correcting. He leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the screen, a single thought echoing in his mind. The work never ends.